And why do you guys have any faith in the idea that there is actually measurable inflation? Because is it reasonable? I don't understand inflation. There's a basket of goods and services that are calculated. The price of them is calculated every year. But what's in that basket of goods and services seems to me to be a relatively arbitrary choice. I mean, what makes you think that there has, in fact, been objectively reliable inflation, say, over the last 30 years, given, for example, that many manufactured goods and so forth have got dramatically cheaper? Now, I know housing in many places has skyrocketed, to a tremendous degree, but do you really feel that the currency has become corrupted, and that you can, and what do you rely on to make that case? What data do you rely on?
I could jump in here, I think. I would say unquestionably debasement of the currency. It is an arbitrary harvesting of the economic surplus a productive free market economy is creating. So as an economy gets more efficient, it generates more wealth that's passed back into to market actors in the form of declining prices. So we're getting smarter at making chairs, smarter at providing services, electronics, all these things. But by printing money, you're basically stealing claims on that economic surplus and doling it out arbitrarily. So we could say another way to think about this is that the free market itself, as you've described, Jordan, it's a distributed computing system. So we all have our 120 bits per second conscious attention span. You multiply that out by 8 billion market participants. That is the cognitive power of the free market. Right. I want to emphasize that because it's such an important point, and it could easily be skipped over, because there are people who admire the ideas of central planning, and you think, well, maybe there's 40 people doing your central planning, and so maybe they're the smartest people in the world and they're doing your central planning, but they have to calculate on the fly a virtually infinite amount of information. If they don't have free market prices at their disposal, they have to calculate what metal is worth, what nails are worth, what labor is worth, what rubber is worth, what cleanup is worth, what nursing is worth, et cetera, et cetera. And they have to do all those comparisons, and they have to do those computations. And there's actually no way even technically of doing that. And the alternative is to distribute that calculation across a virtually infinite number of actors, or actors in the billions at least, and let every single person act as a computational device and sum all that. And that's what the free market does. It's not even in principle replaceable by a logical cognitive mechanism. I can't see how it is. That's exactly right. It's not even possible that a centralized bureaucracy, a centralized computing model, can compete with a distributed computing model of the free market. We could actually, in fact, say that the free market is a pure economic democracy. People are voting by buying and selling, and whatever price is generated on any given asset, that's effectively the truth of what it trades at. Any intervention on that, any intervention, any regulation, any pricing czar, as they had in the USSR, you move along that spectrum towards an economic tyranny, where we have now the arbitrary wishes of a few overriding what the free market democracy is selecting. And to tie this back to the problems with the dollar is, the dollar was gold. By the way, fiat currency never emerges on the free market. That distributed computing model never selects a fiat currency by itself. It's only when natural law is violated, when they step across the line of life, liberty, and property and say, I'm going to impose this technology on you or else. That's the only time fiat currency has ever emerged. And in fact, the dollar itself was just kind of a bait and switch. It was something redeemable for free market money, gold, that was then replaced with this compelled money. And again, if money is speech, we could say then that fiat currency is effectively compelled speech. It's the same thing. They're forcing a language of value. They're forcing its use on you. And if you boil it down to brass tacks, the US dollar today and all fiat currencies, they're pyramid schemes. So pyramid scheme is a system of network marketing, basically, that's useful for enriching those in higher tiers at the expense of those in lower tiers. And you're constantly recruiting more lower tiers to enrich the top. And that's
so let me draw an objection to that just briefly. So I'm going to accept the pyramid scheme hypothesis, but I'm going to say that it's a pyramid scheme that sacrifices the future to the present But that doesn't matter because the future is going to be so much more productive than the present that we can afford that leverage.
It would be, so to make, this is the kernel of economics, right? Is that I can delay consumption or gratification today, invest for the future, and then enjoy more in the future. Fiat currency and central planning more generally reverses that. It actually it induces you to consume and take on debt today and disregard the future. This is the raising of the time preference that we spoke to earlier. So its arbitrary nature, again, it's as Mises would describe, all centrally planned action it runs countervailing to what the free market would choose on its own. So no matter what you do, the government cannot make a good decision if they're coercing people to do it, because they're withdrawing productive factors from the economy to fund that decision. If they want to go to war, for instance, the market may have not selected to go to war, but a government has decided that no, we're going to pull these productive factors from the economy and push us into warfare. So it's contradictory to the essence of democracy itself.
Right, so you guys really see that Bitcoin you really do see it as a distributed form of government as well, in some sense.
It's disruptive to centralized government, yes.